we go. Okay. Okay. So, hi everybody. Welcome back to Talking Therapy here on my YouTube channel. And today I'm very excited to have with me Narelle, who's here from, I think, Melbourne in Australia. And she's a leading practitioner of Radix, which is a somatic body-based therapy. So welcome Narelle. And
thanks.
As usual, I invite you to share a little bit about how you became a therapist, and was it always your childhood dream, or how did it come about?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I was initially an academic, so I did my master's in developmental psych, and I was lecturing in developmental psych and group process and relationships. And I was going for 7 years. That's why I've been working for 7 years. And here in Australia, you get a sabbatical after 7 years. So I was thinking of what would I do on my sabbatical? But at the same time, I was doing a lot of personal work because it was back in the 70s. And everything was being offered, like there were Gestalt groups and TA groups and a variety of others. And one of the things that I had done was Radix groups. And there's a circuitous story about how I got to do that. But in the end, I decided that what I wanted to do was go and train to be a Radix therapist. I am a registered psychologist, so I had that behind me anyway. But the organisation, the university I worked for, said they wouldn't give me paid leave to do that. That was just too far off the, right road. So I took leave without pay and went anyway. And so I moved over to the States and studied and trained over there, and then I came back here.
Wow.
So that's the short story of how. And I continued teaching for about a year, I think it was, and then I decided I wanted to go into private practice. So I've been in private practice ever since.
Wow, thank you. That's like, so you actually you travelled all the way from Australia over to the States just to learn Radix. So you must have been very inspired and innovated by it. Yeah. It
was the one thing that sort of hit a base for me. That's sort of like I did some psychodrama and I was doing Gestalt and I did some TA. But the thing that sort of, I think it was something about being body-based that really appealed to me. And I've been thinking about that more recently. And my dad was very good at sport, but he had a particular attitude, which was that I quoted this at his funeral recently, that when he was, helping me get better at hitting the rounder bat or the softball bat or something, he would always focus on how do you feel in your body as you do that when you get a good hit, not you should do this or you should do that. How do you feel in your body? And I also grew up with my grandparents, and my grandfather had lots of yoga books lying around. And so as a kid, I used to sort of lie around on the floor doing yoga things. So I think there was these little sort of sideline things in my life that were coming in anyway. But something about having to connect with your body experience. I was very good at being able to intellectualize what was going on for me, but to actually make myself experience it was quite a different experience. Yeah. Hit home. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm just like so yes, from your dad and your granddad as well. So it's a little bit of a lineage kind of vaguely coming or on the sideline or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And Radix came to Australia, just happened to come. Like I got into Radix through Eva Reich. Reich's daughter. There was a politician here called, what's his name? It's just gone from my head. Anyway, he organised something called the First Down to Earth Conference. And it was basically a conference up in Canberra that just had all sorts of alternative therapies and other, environmental issues and things. And I got leave from my work to go with another colleague, and we went up there for this conference, and Eva Reich was there, and she was presenting on the work of her father.
Mm-hmm.
And we got really interested, and my colleague said to me, oh, why don't we get her down? At that time I was living in Adelaide. Why don't we get her down to Adelaide and get her to run her workshop so that we could understand what she was doing? And so rather boldly, we went up to her and said, would you come down to Adelaide for a weekend and run a workshop? And she said yes, and if you pay me this, you know, she had a fee. And so we agreed, and then we panicked, of course, because then we had to fill the workshop. So we hurried back to Adelaide, left the conference, hurried back to Adelaide, and encouraged all our friends to attend this workshop. And I started the workshop crying, and I ended the workshop crying. And Eva came up to me and she said, I think you'd really benefit from doing some work with this woman called Lara Amber, who was trained in Radix.
Mm-hmm.
And Lara happened to be in Sydney, but another woman who ended up being a good colleague of mine, and we ran the training together for a number of years, Jackie Scholl, she was bringing Lara to Adelaide. And so that's when I got introduced to Radix work. So there was all these, you know, strange ways that all came together.
Come together, yeah. That's
yeah.
Well, some little force above is kind of pushing domino pieces around a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So that's how it all started, really.
Thank you. So could you tell me a little bit about Radix and where it came from, and kind of a little bit more about the modality, about the therapy itself, that kind of thing?
Yeah, Charles Kelly developed it. He was actually study of vision. He studied vision as a sort of more an academic psychologist, but he was very interested in his own eyesight, and he was training in Bates, alternative vision.
Yeah.
And he became a Bates teacher. And when he did that, he found that when you had started to work with helping people improve their eyesight, a lot of emotions sort of came up.
Yes.
So then he got curious about how to deal with those emotions, and got interested in Reich, and went to New York and studied Reichian work, and did some himself, his own personal work. And then he came back and established Radix in California. So it's neo-Reichian, but I think the main thing that it brings in that was a bit different from some of the other methods at the time was the focus on the eyes and the ocular segment. So that, and it's really a significant thing these days because of trauma work and things like that, that we've always been taught to work with always making sure people are present. And one of the assessments of that, of course, is what's happening in the eyes.
Yes.
And the other thing that I think is still somewhat unique about the work is it really works a lot with pulsation. So it's always working with all the different pulsations in the body. Even, you know, the core to the periphery, sort of movement of energy, or self-contact or other contact, or pulsation between the different segments of the body. So it does still talk about segments in the way that Reichian work talks about segments. I don't know that we literally go down the segments in quite the way that Reich might have, but we definitely do work with these top segments first, and then you're always trying to integrate whatever else you're working with that. So it's about restoration of the life flow, life force, as Reich would say. Yeah.
Wow, interesting, because I didn't know so much about it. I'd heard of it a little, but like certainly with the bio and the Reichian stuff that I teach, we do some eye exercises, and what's always fascinating for kind of students on online courses is like you know, they've been doing all this heavy body movement stuff and breath stuff, and then it looks like kind of an easy week or something to do the eye exercises, and it often stirs up a huge amount of feeling for people. Or it's like, you know, so, Osho also integrated some eye exercises a lot, you know, circular or flicking the eyes to the side or this kind of thing, eyes open, eyes closed. And it's, yeah, So I mean, it does certainly evoke a lot of old feeling and really activates charge very quickly. I mean, I've heard a theory that's because like even now, like when we look up to the left or something like that, we access part of our brain, and when we look in other directions, we access part of our brain. Is that? Did you have any understanding of like the theoretical model of why eye movement seems to be so evocative of feeling and charge inside?
No, but like what you're talking about is the EMDR model, but
Yeah.
no, we don't sort of teach that so much. I think it's more if you have if there's a real pulsation in the eyes, then there's a sense of presence, and you're connecting with yourself and you're connecting with the other person. And there's something about that. I think it's got something more to do with connection than it has any particular technique, and people are often, well, Chuck used to say that that's the integration segment too, so that if people do connect with, say, deep feeling, it's quite one thing to connect with it and another to connect with it and allow it in your eyes. It's much more terrifying, I think, to be allowed to be seen what you're experiencing than it is to sort of just experience it and sort of cut off. So I think it's something about that. It's something about that connection.
So not kind of privately being with your feelings on your own, but allowing them to show, basically.
Yeah, and I think where it's important is that in our work, for example, we would think it was much more important for you to have a sort of low charge feeling that you could allow to be in your eyes than for you to have something that feels like really full and, but you're not really there. So I think that's one of the reasons why I've really valued the work. It's really about, really being present in the moment with whatever you're experiencing and being able to, stay present and tolerate that level of arousal rather than, do some big discharge number that's disconnected. Because that really doesn't get you anywhere, really. It gives you a release, but one of the things Kelly used to say was you have to have a shift in the body. Otherwise, you're just, in a way, venting. And I think that's true too.
Yeah, there certainly seem to be, even from different schools of therapy, certain techniques that we kind of go to as a thing to do about feelings, in a sense, to sort of manage or get rid of them in some way rather than really allow them.
Yeah, there's a difference, isn't it? So it's not about, getting rid of a feeling. It's connecting to what it is at a level that you can tolerate in the moment and stay relational, I think. I think one of the big shifts in the work for me from when I did it as a client and how we teach it and work with it now is it's a lot more relational. So, and I think that's not only true of Radix work, but I think it's true of most methods that were around in the 70s, if you like, that a lot of emphasis then was on catharsis and a form of, and just discharging, and it didn't really matter who was on the receiving end of the discharge. And now it's much more how much feeling or emotion can you have and stay present with who the other person in the room with you as well, sort of thing. And that starts to really shift the dynamics, I think.
So with Radix, I mean, are you normally like offering this as kind of it's like a usually delivered like in a one-to-one kind of session, or is it more workshops, groups, this kind of thing, or both?
Both. Yeah. So I see people individually who see me, and we do individual work focused on working with the body. And I also run residential weekends, and some people run ongoing groups, and so it can go in either direction, and both are quite effective, really. It's a good mix actually to have both. I find my clients get most out of it when they come to see me on a regular basis individually, and then they attend the residential weekends as well.
And so say someone was a one-to-one client coming to you, then what kind of work would you do in the session? Can you describe a bit your approach or kind of things that you usually do?
I think that one of the first things I try and work out is how much they were able to stay good enough connected in their body to be in the room. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people assume that someone, just because they walk in the room, that they're in that they're present enough. So we call it being embodied, I guess. So I initially with my first session, I might ask people, you know, I'll get them to sit where they want to sit in the room, rather than have a chair where they do sit. And we might move the chair around if they look a bit spacey until they get to a place where they, you know, and often what happens is they suddenly sigh, they go, ah. You know, before that, I'll say to them, you know, are you comfortable sitting here, there, you know, and they'll go, oh, yes. And I say, well, are you sure? Let's play with that for a bit. Mm-hmm. So that's where we would start, because I want them to be sufficiently present. And sometimes people aren't. And I've done many sessions with people, some where they sit with their back to me, or there was a guy once who held a big teddy bear in front of him for about 6 sessions because that was the only way he felt he could be in the room and have any sense of connection with me. So put emphasis on, and there are other people, of course, who come in and that's an easy step for them, and you don't have to go through that process, but that we do focus on that to start with. Mm-hmm. And then I think a lot of it's sort of developing a sense of what they are and are not aware of. So regardless of what issue they might have come with, I'll be tracking their body, I guess. And so I might say, oh, did you notice that you stopped breathing when you did that? Did you, and if they say no, then we just let it go. If they say yes, we'll say, well, wonder what that was about. And then we might get them focusing on that and breathing a bit more, or I might notice that they've gone away and I'll encourage them to go away more or come back and and slowly build it. So you're in a way getting them to track themselves as well, and what happens when certain topics are raised or they're talking about things. I have mats, so sometimes I might get people down on a mat if I think I need to get them moving a bit more to see what happens when they, you know, move, because some of us can be really connected to ourselves until we start to move or connect more deeply with feelings. So it's not so much that you put people through a particular routine, but rather you're observing and mirroring back, commenting on what you see, getting them to notice that, reflect on that, play with it a bit more by deepening it a bit more, or does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, in the kind of terminology I often end up using as a therapist, it's like you're working quite a bit initially with kind of dissociation, in a sense, that the people not really allowing themselves to be, they're physically present, but they're not really emotionally, or they're just not really present in the deep sense in the space. They kind of, some slightly unconscious program has basically said, oh, I'm not sure if this is safe, and they kind of jumped up at faith, you know.
Yeah, so you're trying to bring them back to that place where they, in a way, that they're more connected.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you're always relating it to the issues that they've brought, and usually they're related, you know. You know.
Well, sure, because of course, you know, even signing up for a therapy group or booking a one-to-one session, immediately your mind, sometimes people do that, you know, in a state of either momentary awareness or often momentary a crisis. You know, a crisis is happening and they think, okay, now I need to do something about something. And then you take the step and you kind of know that your mind will try and negotiate back down a little bit before you get to the actual session or the workshop, but you've committed to it. I often used to notice when I was running a lot of workshops, you know, people come in very in a very angsty state, you know, coming out of their home to a center in the countryside, and it's very, you know, and you have to do, you know, do good work to just understand what helps the average person to feel kind of okay with you in the space and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and depending on their level of awareness, you know, some people just aren't aware of what they're paying attention to, are they? So like when they walk into my office, something that they ask, where's my chair, you know, and I go, well, I don't have one, you know, I rotate around the room depending on where people are. And so I say, oh, you just choose one where you feel comfortable and move it where you feel comfortable. And then obviously sometimes it's interesting to just say to them, why did you choose that? You know, what was it happening in your body that made you make that choice? And even that starts to give you a sense of how much awareness they have as a jumping off point for where you might start, you know. Some people haven't got a clue. They just said, oh, it was the closest or it was the easiest, or, you know, like, let's get on with what we're supposed to do. But really, there's no point in doing that if they're not with you.
Yeah.
Or with themselves, really. If they're not with themselves. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So it sounds like it's quite a, you know, like the work I do, I tend to call it quite awareness-based. You know, the kind of, in some schools of psychotherapy, you know, you're looking more at functionality, social functioning of the ego, or whatever, which is all valid and stuff. Because of course we want to be functional in relationships and friendships. But I tended to, because coming from more of an Osho background, awareness was the kind of the bottom line thing, you know, that just to be really present with your whole inner world as well as the external world is kind of the way forwards in a sense, and or moving into greater self-awareness. But this itself is a kind of healing force in the sense that as you become more aware of your habitual strategies and why you're doing them, and you can get some of the charge that's hardwiring the psyche into defensive behaviors or whatever, you know, slowly you have more freedom and option. And it's, I don't know if Radix is similar in that, but I often find that a little bit missing in traditional psychoanalysis or psychotherapy. I mean,
they're not doing what isn't it?
I don't know. I guess it's like, okay, what is the basic therapeutic direction? What are we aiming towards? Not that there's necessarily a full-on goal. I mean, some people of course want to know that, but is there a basic model, you know? And yeah, so I mean, for me, it's always been this kind of, since I became a therapist, the idea, okay, we're leading into greater self-awareness, and with that will come a more healthy functioning and a more authentic personality.
Yeah, I think in Radix, we'd say our goal was restoration of the pulsation and the pulsation of the life force. So, you know, and Kelly said that the Radix underlies thinking, feeling, behavior.
Yes.
So it can be, that pulsation can be blocked in any of those areas. And so that's what we're curious about, you know, how does this life force, this energy, for want of a better word, it's more than energy really, isn't it, gets blocked in your thinking and in how you move and in your emotions, you know. And so for different people, that'll have a different combination. So for some people, you might focus a lot more on enabling them to get more in touch with their emotions. With others, you might be focusing more on how the pulsation gets blocked by their thinking. But usually if you start working with the body, my experience is those things just, you know, you're working with the emerging process and those things just come up. You don't have to sort of go looking for them. You know? Yeah.
I mean, does the word radix come from? Did Dr. Kelly have some kind of a concept behind this word? It's a bit of an unusual word.
Look, there was a woman who gave him that name, and now if I was really good, I'd actually, you know, my mind's going blank, but Janet Goodrich.
Okay.
She was also involved in vision work, and they were just having a conversation one day about what you'd call it, and Kelly didn't want to call it energy, because he thought it was more the life force was more than just what people think of as sort of mechanical energy, and he didn't want to call it spirit because of all the spiritual connotations to that.
Yeah.
And this woman suggested it was called Radix. And if you look it up, it means life force, really. So it felt like it was a more neutral name.
Yeah, well, I can understand the reasoning behind that. I mean, it's kind of a shame still. I guess in the West, we have to be super hard science or something, but if you travel to more Eastern cultures, then it's quite normal in Oriental culture or Indian culture to have like prana or chi or whatever in Hebrew, you know, like it's like the idea of a kind of life energy that can be quite strong or a bit restricted or a bit weak or whatever is kind of quite instinctive in the culture, and that's kind of also mapped out into their own kind of theoretical models of how life is and science and stuff like that. But like in the West, of course, we quickly recognize whether someone looks alive or whether they look a bit kind of alive.
That's right.
But we don't have like any kind of theoretical model. It's kind of a shame we don't, but I guess we have to stick to what we've scientifically discovered, and that's a bit how it is. But it's kind of it is a pity in a sense.
Yeah, because you're right. You watch a performer and you know whether they're connected or not, or whether there's aliveness in them, don't you?
Yeah.
You respond to them in that way.
Yeah. People constantly monitor us. You know, as a therapist, you know, people will come to me who somehow perceive that I'm someone who can support them in a certain way, that they either resonate with what I've got, or they feel, oh, this is the right person to kind of push me in the areas where I need to be pushed or whatever. And then others will see me and think, no, not that guy or whatever, you know. It's intuitive kind of, that's kind of what I like about doing work with video on YouTube. You know, you just, as a therapist, it does give people much more of a chance to kind of see, oh, who is this person, you know, kind of and stuff like that. The old days of sort of static images in leaflets or on web pages, it's kind of a little bit harder, you know. It is much harder. So I mean, what do you particularly love about your work, Narelle?
Oh, look, I feel often at the end of when I run a Radix residential weekend on Sunday afternoon, you know, when it's all coming to a close, I just feel so privileged, really. There's blessed in a sort of way. I think there's a way, I don't know, just to bring forward that aliveness, I think, in people, and you know, you just get to know people very well and very intimately in some ways, don't you? That there's something about that, seeing them change and develop, and it's a bit like raising a child or something, isn't it? Seeing those changes, and it's a very fulfilling way to work, I think. And I also like the challenge it brings up for myself, you know, because, you know, we all have our own personalities and stuff. And I think that was one of the other things that attracted me about Radix work, was that you had to do your own personal work. Like you had to do the equivalent of 3 years of personal work at least, sort of, to become certified. And so you had to do that work yourself as well as work with people and be supervised and all that. So there was something about that whole combination that I loved in the training, and that is still there in the training, and that I think I love as a practitioner, like getting my own supervision when I'm working with people, seeing how that brings up my own issues, having to address those. It creates a sort of a fullness. It's not just a cognitive abstract thing or something that you do. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, no, I totally relate to what you're saying. I mean, it's like, that's it. You know, sometimes people ask me, okay, you know, I've done these things, therefore, you know, it's like that we associate easily the idea that you can be a therapist by learning something out of a book, and of course there is a book element part to it, but also, you know, you need somewhere to go through this personal journey, and and the depth to which you've gone through your own personal journey and faced your own inner unconscious demons, or whatever you want to conceptualize on that, kind of dictates the depth to which you can work with other people, and classically the kinds of issues that you're good at working with. You know, I was an adopted kid. I'm good at working with adopted kids, and they often seem to come to me even if they don't know I was an adopted kid. You know, it's like people can spot something, and then, you know, if you've been a former drug user, then they're generally better at working with drug users than someone who's a non-former drug user generally, you know, and that kind of thing. It's like,
and I think the other thing is that the longer you work, like I've been working now in private practice 40 years or something, and people still can bring stuff up that stirs up stuff in me that still needs to get addressed. So it's not like it's an end product, is it? It's sort of, it's something about that ongoing process.
Yes.
That I like, that it challenge, that I'm always challenged by it, I think. And also I think the model that I work with, because it is working with the emerging process all the time, I don't know what's going to happen in a session. And so that's what keeps me interested. Whereas sort of if I had a sort of way of formula or something, I'd get bored pretty quickly, I think. So yeah, so it's the unknown.
Well, yes, totally. You know, it's like, I mean, it reminds me, you know, I was running a lot of workshops when I was living communally in a spiritual community for 17 years. And then when I became a therapist there, then for like about 8-10 years, I mean, I was running workshops several a month, you know, and frequently through the winter, every weekend. And now I kind of, you know, 18 months, I've kind of, after a lot, I haven't really been doing that. And I've moved, before that, I've moved out of the community anyway. But it is a very exciting space to be holding space with staff and 20, 30 people, or whatever, you know, that you're working with. And it does really keep you on your toes. And also, yes, I mean, I went through a huge journey in how I was holding space, from being very kind of yang and pushing to, wow, I need to really to see, oh, wow, this is totally not working in this situation, and actually I need to change, you know, and come from a different approach. So it's like, it's very personal, you know. And then, of course, you know, students or participants or whatever, some will super push your buttons in certain ways, possibly deliberately or possibly not, and that provides us with the potential to deepen our self-awareness. Okay, what's being pushed in me by this person, you know? That's right. I kind of find myself reacting to them in some way, rather than behaving towards them in the way I would ideally like to. And situations and resistance and all of this kind of learning, you know, it's such an immensely nourishing thing to do on so many levels, holding groups. So I mean, I miss it a bit. I mean, it's also quite hard work and stuff, but I mean, I think I will at some point have to come back and try and I do little one-to-one. I do like 3-hour sessions for people and stuff like that, but I haven't been or longer workshops. What about yourself during all this crisis time since last 15 months or so? Have you how's your work been with therapy?
Well, it's been interesting. I was just thinking the other thing that adds a dimension to it all, of course, is running training, which again is different from therapy, isn't it? And that then you've got another level of, you know, how to teach different people. But I was a bit down when we first had to go on Zoom sessions, you know, teletherapy sessions. I thought, oh, how on earth are we going to do somatic work on telly? But in fact, you know, I sent out messages to clients and said, bring in mattresses and cushion, you know, if you've got a mat or a cushion and towels, and they did. They all brought it in, and we ended up having some really creative and fun sessions on Zoom. But it's not the same as face-to-face. I don't care what people say. I just don't think it's the same. And in training, we've had to do the same. We've had to sort of, we'd already started converting. It used to be a 3-year training program that you had to commit to and then do for 3 years. And then we decided to just offer it in modules, and that people didn't have to make a commitment to the whole program. They could just come and do separate. And that's proved quite effective. But again, we had to go online, and But, we've had some fun sessions again, like we've had people in England giving people in Italy sessions, and, people in Scotland giving people in Melbourne sessions, and we've sat in and supervised them. So in some ways, some of the challenges of the current time have forced us to be a bit more creative, I think, and a little less locked in our ideas of how to do these things. So again, it's a challenge.
Yes, no, but that's it. You're articulating it very well, I think, at the end there. Like, just that is it. It does, because I don't know, when my own, a lot of the therapists I trained with are very vibrant people. I really, that's what I saw in them from the crowd I was with. And at the same time, there's a rigidity as well in outlook or attitude. And this is how stuff is in the group room. And there's reasons for that rigidity as well. But then when the lockdown came, of course, then, okay, all groups are kind of suspended. We don't know how long for, and physical meeting and stuff like that. It does kind of force you into being creative. I think, people have been asking me to create like online courses for some time. And initially I was like, no, it's not possible to do that. What I'm doing has to be done in person and that kind of thing. And then over time, I did start to kind of further think about that idea and how really true was it. And I ended up creating stuff shortly before the lockdown started, which was kind of fortuitous in a way. But certainly there's a couple of things, but it does inspire us to look, okay, how is something possible, to really say, if it's absolutely not possible to meet physically, then what can we do? What can we do? And it took some of that rigidity out of me, and a few other therapists I know have had a similar experience, and secondarily, of course, a huge thing is that a lot of people can't, this kind of work is not so common these days, working.
No.
So people are looking around for therapists, and there's none within a 1,000-mile radius or something. And if someone's in their 20s, and they're maybe not earning a heap of cash, I mean, there's very little option for them to get involved with it. But of course, if you can create stuff online, the potential is there for it to be cheaper and greatly much more accessible. So I guess there's swings and roundabouts, but at the same time, it would be wonderful to be able to create, to actually start working in person again as well.
Yeah, I think so. But clients have to be prepared to, have their computers, and sometimes we put them on the floor so you can see them sort of lying, and sometimes they're and then they're going to go and get equipment. So, it doesn't flow in quite the same way, but we still can achieve things, I think.
Yeah. The peer pressure and kind of accountability factor is something I'm still trying to a little bit work on with online courses. But because when I was doing it, I signed up initially for like a year, 9 weekends in a year, in this training, and then I ended up doing all 4 years of it. But like numerous occasions, I mean, there's certainly times when I was looking forward to a weekend once or twice, but most of the time I was not. And sometimes I know my own mind, I would easily have found a way out if it wasn't for this kind of very strong peer group that was going on, from the friendship and also the accountability, the way they kind of say, well, what do you mean you're not going to come to the next workshop? And they're challenging the pet story as to why you shouldn't attend and this kind of thing, and you then after a while, they're going to challenge you. So that certainly kind of cemented me on the path. And without that peer pressure and the support that I got, it wouldn't, because it is not easy to reach out. It's easy to reach out when I'm feeling good, but when I'm not feeling good, or when I'm struggling with something, it is definitely much harder to reach out, certainly for me. And I think that's fairly common. And then working online, it is a little bit, it's just to get that discipline going, the external forces that help to maintain it aren't always so present. It's trickier.
No, although we've got a core group here of people who are in training, and they've done some face-to-face and some online, and they're a consistent core group. And there's a group in the UK, there's a guy from Italy, but apart from that, they're mostly UK people, and they've stayed a pretty consistent core group. So that sort of core group you're talking about can build. But I guess it's been with both of those groups, it's been a mix of face-to-face and online. Yeah. I think that it's important, isn't it? I mean, when recently we went back to a face-to-face session, I realized that what gets lost in the Zoom training sessions is the incidental contact you have while you're having cups of tea and lunch, and you get together with someone and go for a walk with them for lunch and stuff, and that doesn't happen online. And that builds friendships, doesn't it?
Yes. I mean, also, I was leading just a little workshop around the corner yesterday, and just an afternoon thing, and then I'm much more reticent about getting people to hug now, sometimes, because what I teach can be done from a distance. You can be 2 meters separate or 6 foot separate, and then I'm a bit like, it's tricky when some people, are concerned about getting coronavirus and others not, and all these different, because also I work quite a lot with people a bit in the alternative domain, and that domain's been quite split by COVID, with some people just rapidly anti-it, some people really thinking we should need to take a lot more care, and others in the middle. So it is all a bit of a chaos at the moment, but that social connection is powerful as well, and meeting people, meeting like-minded people was always a big thing as well. It's like, but Radix is
right though. I was just going to say, you're right, though, that touch has got lost, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's quite sad, that, there's a lot more reticence about whether you touch or don't touch. And we had quite a few conversations in our organisation here around that, as we were switching from Zoom to face-to-face, and at what point would you start touching people again, or would they be comfortable, all of that. It's a shame, because it's been hard to bring that into therapy anyway now.
But I also see the risk level. I'm no longer really a part of the community I was involved with for a long time, but they started running festivals because we were allowed to run festivals in the UK from like mid-July on, and also saw, a festival of 100 people for a few days, 98% of people get COVID. I mean, it's like, it's quite extreme, because it seems to come in more if there's more hard opening. This is also, I don't know if that's absolutely true, but a lot of the events where I saw people getting a lot of COVID, they're doing a lot of hugging, they're getting close, and there's emotional opening as well. And it seemed, I don't know if it fueled it, but I mean, it was like, so, I guess, I don't know, hopefully by this time next year, we've all got more of a handle on it, and it's not getting worse, and people are just saying, hey, let's just start doing stuff again. It's kind of a shame that we so easily drop touch, and I understand the validity of it, but we don't always appreciate, how necessary it is. How much a part of a healthy human life physical contact is. It's
quite sad, really.
You don't really have it as part of the Minister of Health here. It's not going to be saying you're not even acknowledging it, even if you can't do it, you're not even acknowledging it. So I was just going to say, so Radix is quite busy. It's got it's running in the UK, so it's running in English. You're saying, because that's interesting. I have a lot of people view my content from the UK. What's going on in the UK? How would people who are interested check it out and that kind of thing, or how would they check it out generally to anybody who's watching this video?
Probably, if you went on the Radix Institute website. That they'd advertise it, or the Australian Radix website. We advertise the workshops that we're running over there and here on those websites, or contact me, or contact Melissa, who I think you originally contacted. We always know what's going on in terms of workshops and availability.
Is there like one Radix organization but still kind of an umbrella for everything, or has it, like some of these other therapies, kind of splintered off into different directions? Or
no, we're more or less one now. There was it started in the US, and then I trained and another woman, Jackie Scholl, trained, and we brought it to Australia and ran training here. And then some people trained and they took it to Europe. And then that side of things did die down for a bit. And then the Radix Institute in the States did split for a little while, but they're now back as a whole. And I think it was 2011, I became the director over there as well as here for training. So that sort of brought those two organisations probably a little bit more as an umbrella. And we're the umbrella that then runs stuff in the UK at the moment, so if that makes sense. So yeah, at the moment we are a united front. Yeah.
I mean, it's nice also to hear that, because usually these organisations kind of split a little bit here,
I know.
here. So it's nice to hear of one that they came back together. That's
yes, it took a lot of work, but yeah, it's good, I think. Yeah.
Well, it's anything else you'd like to say or put out about your work or Radix or anything?
I don't think so. No, that's fine.
Well, I'm really happy that you came on, Narelle, and thank you so much for taking part and explaining all about your work and some beautiful insights that you've shared. And so it's been really lovely chatting to you. And I'll put, for anybody interested, like a link to the main Radix.
That'd be great.
Somewhere in the description underneath. And
right.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Steph. Good to meet you too. All right. Bye-bye.